The version of yourself that you want to become, the fitter, more confident, more disciplined version, the version who walks into a room without the fear of what other people might think, she won't be built in one single big decision. She'll get built in the tiny 1,000 choices you'd barely even register making. Specifically, the choices you currently keep avoiding. Back when I started my own transformation into the person I am today, I did so by completely changing the way I approached decision making. I pivoted away from the person who would always default to the easier option and completely broke that pattern. And this changed how I think about discipline, identity, and what it actually takes to becoming unrecognizable. And by the end of this video, you'll leave with a really practical way of changing how you approach decision making. This change is the key that will lead to your dream physique, but more importantly, your dream life. But this is the bit that nobody tells you about making hard choices. When trying to make a difficult decision, you are always met with resistance. But the resistance you feel isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually a sign that you're doing something right. And once you understand why that resistance exists and what it's doing to your identity every time you give into it, you can't unknow it. It completely rewires how you make decisions. But first, I want to talk about something that's probably making this harder for you than it needs to be. There's a philosopher called Ruth Chang who talks about the concept of the drifter. She says that a drifter isn't someone who's lazy or unmotivated. A drifter is someone who lets the world write the story of their life rather than writing it themselves. And it hit me pretty fucking hard when I came across that, because 5 years ago, that was me. I was a drifter. I'd cut my workouts short. I'd skip the session that I'd promised myself at the end of a shift because I was tired. I'd forget my meal prep so I had an excuse to go and buy a meal deal from Tesco. The easier choices were a no-brainer for me every single time. But the thing about the easy choice is that every time you take the easy option, you don't just miss out on the better outcome. You actively decide that you are becoming the person who takes the easy option. You're not just skipping a run, you're deciding who you are. And that's the bit that should probably make you feel pretty uncomfortable, because it means that the unrecognizable version of you, the version that you're desperate to unlock, she's getting further away with every choice, not closer. So now that you understand the real cost of the easy choice, let's talk about what's actually going on when that hard option feels absolutely impossible. Because this next part unlocks the whole thing. When you spent a long time defaulting to the easy option, hard choices feel harder for one specific reason: the fear of the unknown. Your brain has no evidence that the hard path is safe, so it goes into protection mode. You've never made this choice before, so your brain has no reference point. And this is where most people get stuck, because they wait until they feel ready to make the hard choice. But the only way you can feel ready for something is when you have evidence of how it's gone in the past. You know what doing a food shop looks like because you've done 700 of them in the past. You know what taking the route to the office looks like because you've done it so many times before. But you're only going to get that evidence by doing the thing in the first place. So the tool that actually works, especially early on, is a quick little worst case, best case assessment. Before you make the choice, ask yourself, what's the absolute worst outcome of doing this? For example, going out for a run in the rain. The worst case scenario: you get a bit wet, your hair gets frizzy, and you're a bit cold. That's it. Now you ask, what's the best that could happen? You start the day with a load of endorphins, the run goes really well, you may even get a PB, even if it was just because you were sprinting back to the house in the last kilometre because you wanted to get out of the rain. And most importantly, you prove to yourself that you are the person who follows through on her promises. And it sounds pretty basic, and to start with, it's gonna feel pretty laboured. But you only need to do this until the hard choices start feeling instinctual. And they will, because the more you override that fear response, the weaker it becomes. But this bit is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just about those one-off choices and those every now and again worst case, best case scenarios. There's a compounding effect to all of this. Because when you cut corners in your training, you miss a couple of sets, you don't push to failure, you coast through your session. You're not just cutting corners in your training session, you are perfecting the art of cutting corners. And this corner cutting attitude will automatically bleed into other areas of your life: your professional decisions, your relationships, how seriously you take your own commitments. So you have to think about your values. If you say that you value taking care of yourself, but then you're ordering a greasy takeaway every night because you can't be bothered to cook, then those two things are in direct conflict. And every time that happens, you are weakening that value. You're proving to yourself that you don't actually give a shit about yourself. On the other hand, when you make the hard choice and it pays off, when you get out for the run in the rain and it feels incredible, when you cook for yourself instead of ordering in, you don't just get a good workout, you don't just get a healthy meal, you get evidence that you can do hard things. You can make the harder choice in the moment that has the better outcome in the long term. And once you have that evidence, you're then going to start seeking out hard things because you know what's on the other side. The resistance gets lower and the easier option starts to feel less satisfying because it feels out of sync to who you're becoming. Which brings me to where I actually want you to start, because there's one mistake people make when they try to implement this, and it's what causes them to quit by day 3. I don't want you to wake up tomorrow and decide to choose the hardest option in every single area of your life every single minute of the day. That's not how sustainable change happens, and you'll burn out before anything sticks. Start small. For the next 7 days, pick 1 or 2 moments per day where you make the choice that your future self would make rather than your current self would. Do the workout you said you'd do. Cook the meal instead of ordering in. Grab a salad rather than a sandwich. These moments will probably feel small, but they're not. They're the beginning of the rewiring process that will eventually house the happier, more confident, unrecognizable version of you. So I want you to picture this. 7 days from now, you've made 2 small, harder choices every day. Nothing dramatic, but you've got 14 new pieces of evidence that you are the kind of woman who follows through on her promises, that you're someone who does what she says she's going to do. And if you want a really clear, structured way to start putting all of this into practice, the top link in my description gives you access to our 4-week free coaching offer. We're going to give you a simple but effective gym training plan and nutrition targets to follow so that you're not having to figure out the what whilst you're trying to figure out the who. It removes the guesswork and gives you a very, very simple framework to follow. So go check it out. Subscribe if you're new so you don't miss out on the next installment of the Becoming Unrecognizable series, and I'll see you in the next one.